Hello, everyone. Good night. For your hope in me and to help me create better stories, tell me in the comments where and when you listen to my stories. And get ready to start the story by liking and subscribing. Whispers of the Eastern Call. In the serene embrace of Venice's lagoon, where the waters kissed the ancient wooden pilings with the tenderness of a lullaby, and the autumn sun of 1271 gilded the winding canals in hues of liquid gold and amber. Young Marco Polo awoke to the gentle tug of destiny's invisible thread. At 17 summers old, born in the year 1254 to a lineage of seafaring merchants whose family crests gleamed proudly with the twin lions of St. Mark, Marco had long inhaled the intoxicating scents that defined his city. The sharp brine of the Adriatic Sea, mingling with the exotic whispers of spices from distant bazaars. Cinnamon bark from the spice groves of Ceylon, myrrh resin from the sun-baked sands of Arabia, drifting lazily on the wakes of passing gondolas. The Rialto Bridge. You probably know this place. In fact, many places in Italy, their streets are stalled by fashion. The next stop, the Rialto Bridge. To sum up, voice and anticipate me. I'm very sorry for any disruption. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry. Please contact me immediately. I'm very sorry. I am very Malvasia wine imported from the sun-drenched isles of Crete. These were the echoes of Venice's golden age, forged in the fires of the Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople in 1204, when Latin knights had claimed Byzantine treasures, filling the city's arsenals and churches with gold icons and porphyry columns that still caught the light like captured sunbeams. Tonight, as the harvest moon hung low in the indigo sky, like a burnished pearl suspended on silken cords, casting elongated silver paths across the glassy lagoon, where fishing barks rocked gently like cradled infants, Marco felt a deeper, more insistent whisper from the east. It was a call carried on the prevailing winds that had danced across the vast, windswept steppes of the Mongol Empire, brushing against the jagged peaks of the Pamir Mountains and the endless dunes of the Taklamakan Desert, before arriving, faint but undeniable, at the city's marble quays. Marco's chamber in the Polo family palazzo, a modest yet elegant structure of red brick and creamy Istrian stone, perched on a gentle bend of the Grand Canal, overlooked this watery world. Its leaded glass windows framing views of the Salute's undulating domes and the distant silhouette of the arsenal, where shipwrights hammered away at hulls destined for the Levant. The air inside was cool and still, scented with the faint, comforting aroma of beeswax from the guttered candles on his oaken writing desk, where lay an open, vellum-bound volume of Pliny the Elder's Naturalis Historia, its pages illuminated with delicate marginal sketches of elephants roaming the Indies and mythical phoenixes rising from Arabian ashes, wonders that had fueled Marco's boyhood dreams under his mother's watchful gaze. The Polo household stirred with a quiet, purposeful anticipation, like the first ripples on a pond disturbed by a falling leaf. Niccolo, Marco's father, a man of 40 winters, with a beard as finely woven as silver filigree, and eyes sharp and piercing as a peregrine falcon's gaze, paced the open loggia that overlooked the canal's shimmering flow. He and his brother Maffeo had ventured into the heart of the East a full decade earlier, in 1260, bearing sealed papal letters from Pope Urban IV to the formidable Kublai Khan, the grandson of the indomitable Genghis Khan, whose sprawling empire had woven a tapestry of conquest from the Danube's misty banks to the fog-shrouded shores of the Sea of Japan. They had lingered for years in the Khan's opulent court at Xanadu, that legendary summer palace of white marble pavilions nestled amid whispering willows and manicured gardens, where fountains tinkled like silver coins and peacocks strutted under pavilions of embroidered silk. Returning only now, their hens heavy with rubies from Burmese mines and sapphires from Ceylon's gem pits, sewn discreetly to evade brigands, they had regaled Venice's Doge Lorenzo Tiepolo and the assembled Senate with tales that set the council chamber aglow like a Byzantine mosaic. The great Khan seeks alliance with the Franks of the West, Niccolo had declared, his voice steady and resonant amid the murmurs of silk-robed patricians, oils consecrated from the Holy Land's olives, master artisans versed in the crafting of astrolabes and stained glass, gifts to bind our divided worlds in threads of mutual prosperity, Maffeo. Ever the quieter counterpart, with a frame as sturdy as a galley mast, and hands calloused from years of ledger-keeping in distant connaughts, nodded solemnly from his seat by the hearth, where a low fire of olive wood shavings crackled softly, sending curls of fragrant smoke up the chimney. The brothers' preparations for the return journey had unfolded over weeks. Heavy oak chests banded with iron from the Tyrol mines, brimming with Venetian glass beads that caught the light like captured stars in a midnight sky, and bolts of crimson damask woven on the handlooms of Lucca. Their threads dyed with the precious kermes insect from the hills of Tuscany, fabrics destined to adorn the Khan's courtiers, who favored garments flowing like rivers of blood under the Cathay sun. Marco, slipping from his truckle bed, where the straw mattress sighed a reluctant farewell, donned a simple tunic of fine wool dyed in the deep blue of woad from the Venetian hinterlands, its fabric soft against his skin like a whispered promise. He belted it with a strip of supple leather tanned in the workshops of Cordoba, a remnant from a Moorish trader's stall, and stepped out onto the loggia, where the morning mist rose from the canal like veils of gossamer silk. The air there was alive with the lagoon's eternal breath, the faint rhythmic slap of water against stone, the distant cry of a herring gull wheeling over the Lido's sands, and the subtle perfume of blooming jasmine climbing the palazzo's trellised walls, its white petals unfurling like tiny moons in the dawn light. Marco joined his father, who placed a warm, calloused hand on his shoulder, the touch grounding as sun-baked terracotta warmed by a Tuscan noon. "Breathe with the dawn's first light, my son," Niccolo murmured, his words carrying the cadence of a man who had learned patience from the endless horizons of the Silk Road. In, drawing the lagoon's boundless breath deep into your lungs, tasting the salt of endless horizons that have borne our kin across uncharted seas, filling you with the quiet, unyielding strength of waters that carve canyons from stone over eons. Out, releasing the anchors of home that hold. Bus fast, letting them sink gently into the canal's silken embrace, freeing your spirit to unfurl like a sail before the zephyr's kiss. Marco closed his eyes, echoing the ritual, a custom his father had adopted from the whirling dervishes of Persian Sufi lodges encountered during his first Eastern sojourn, where breath served as the sacred thread binding the mortal coil to the divine winds of the cosmos. His chest rose and fell in perfect harmony with the lapping waves below, the faint flutter of apprehension in his heart easing away like ripples smoothing on a windless mirror, replaced by a profound, settling calm that seeped into his bones like warm olive oil. By midday, as the sun climbed higher, painting the lagoon's surface in strokes of molten silver, and the city's campaniles chimed the hour from San Marco's golden domes, the Polo brothers' preparations reached their poignant crescendo at the Riva degli Schiavoni, that lively quay where Slavic traders from Dalmatia's coasts mingled with Levantine sailors in turbans of striped cotton. Their vessel, a sturdy cog of seasoned Dalmatian oak with ribs curved like a galleon's smile and a prow boldly carved with the rampant lion of Venice, bobbed patiently against the mossy quay, its single square sail furled tight as a sleeping swan's wing. The crew, hardy Chioggiani fishermen, turned mariners, their skin bronzed by Adriatic gales, and arms tattooed with anchors entwined with the keys of St. Thomas. Peter hauled aboard the final crates, their grunts low and rhythmic like the oarsman's chant on a galley row. Farewells unfolded in a tapestry of embraces and whispered blessings. Aunts pressing small talismans of olive wood, carved with the Virgin's likeness into calloused palms. Cousins reciting fragments from the Litany of the Saints in Latin cadences that echoed off the water. And servants scattering rose petals from the palazzo's garden onto the deck, their fragrance mingling with the tarry scent of caulked seams. As the first zephyrs from the Po River's delta filled the canvas with a soft sigh, propelling the cog out into the lagoon's vast mirror, Venice began to recede like a cherished mirage dissolving in the morning haze. The slender towers of San Giorgio Maggiore pierced the cerulean sky like needles threading clouds, while the bulbous domes of the Salute glowed with an inner fire, as if lit by the city's unquenchable spirit. Marco stood at the rail, his fingers tracing the salt-smoothed wood worn by countless hands before his own. Feeling the ship's gentle rock lull his senses into a meditative sway. The journey begins not with the haste of a storm-tossed bark, Niccolo counseled, his voice blending with the creak of rigging and the flap of drying laundry from passing barges, but with the heart's quiet opening, like a lotus blossom yielding to the Ganges' first dawn light, petal by petal. The Adriatic Sea yielded gracefully to the deeper blues of the Ionian, their path tracing the ancient wakes of Odysseus himself, where myths of sirens and cyclopes still lingered in the foam. The crew's shanties rose low and rolling, like distant thunder, over the wine-dark waves. Verses in Venetian dialect, praising San Nicolo's protection and cursing Neptune's whims. By nightfall, The firmament unfolded above like a vast, embroidered dome. Polaris, the North Star, guiding their prow like a shepherd's unwavering lantern, while the crew pointed out southern constellations, those unfamiliar jewels from Ptolemy's Almagest, the 2nd century Alexandrian tome that mapped the spheres with mathematical grace, its influence reaching even the Khan's observatories. Storms came not as tempests, but as gentle visitations, rains pattering on the deck like the fingers of a lute player coaxing melody from strings. Prusade's 1099 conquest, now shadowed by the rising Mamluk sultans of Cairo. They bartered for lumps of frankincense, its resinous tears evoking the Magi's ancient gifts to Bethlehem, and lingered in the labyrinthine markets where Coptic merchants from the Nile Delta hawked combs of carved ivory inlaid with lapis, motifs of lotus flowers and ibises symbolizing rebirth. From Acre, the true caravan coassed, a string of swaying Bedouin camels from the Negev's nomadic clans, their brass bells tinkling like wind chimes in a tranquil Persian garden, laden with shimmering silks dyed in the legendary purple vats of Tyre, that Phoenician port whose murex snails had colored emperors' togas since antiquity. Through the Levant's terraced hills they wound, olive groves silvering under the relentless sun, their gnarled trunks whispering of David's slings and Solomon's cedars, fruits pressed into golden oil that scented the air like a divine benediction. Breath guided them through the midday heat's languor. In the desert's dry, whispering kiss, drawing clarity and resolve like a nomad's well, drawing cool sustenance from hidden aquifers. Out, the swirling dust of ages, letting it settle as softly as grains in an hourglass, revealing the path ahead unclouded. Marco marveled at Damascus, that eternal oasis of slender minarets piercing azure skies, founded in the mists of Abraham's wanderings, yet flourishing under the Umayyad caliphs since 661 AD, its labyrinthine souks alive with the melodic clink of Byzantine Byzance changing hands and the spice merchants' rhythmic calls. Strands of saffron harvested from the arid fields of Khorasan, threads of gold filigree finer than a spider's nocturnal weave. Southward and eastward to Baghdad, once the jewel in Harun al-Rashid's 9th century crown, with its house of wisdom translating Aristotle into Arabic under the caliph's patronage, now a resilient phoenix under Ilkhanid Mongol oversight since Hulagu Khan's devastating sack in 1258, its ziggurat-like ruins evoking the hanging gardens of ancient Babylon. Here, Niccolo recounted his prior passage in hushed tones by the campfire. Chance encounters with Nestorian Christian monks, descendants of the 5th century schism from Byzantine Orthodoxy, bearing pectoral crosses of lapis and amber, and sharing illuminated tales of the elusive Prester John, that mythical priest-king whose Christian kingdom was rumored to lie beyond the Hindu Kush. The Tigris River carried them northward by slender feluccas, its current as lazy and meandering as a storyteller's deliberate pause between revelations, its banks lined with lush date palms, heavy with clusters of amber fruit that dangled like lanterns in the breeze, their shade a merciful respite from the noon's unrelenting blaze. Evenings gathered around campfires of fragrant tamarisk wood, flames dancing low and hypnotic, the caravan sharing flatbreads of barley flour baked on hot stones and reciting verses from Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, the 10th century Persian epic whose heroic cadences lulled the soul like a mother's cradle song. Its tales of Rostam and Sohrab weaving threads of valor through the night's velvet dark. The Persian highlands rose next like the spine of some primordial dragon, a verdant tapestry of saffron fields blooming near the ancient city of Nishapur, where devastating earthquakes in 1253 had toppled minarets but spared the weavers' humble looms, producing rugs knotted with intricate motifs of slender cypress trees, symbolizing eternity's unyielding grace. Camels plodded steadfastly over the tortuous passes of the Elburz Mountains, their bells a soothing metronome to the wind's melancholic sigh through cedar boughs. Marco's soft moccasins, crafted from supple Venetian tanned leather, crunching on scree that sparkled like scattered topaz gems under the alpine sun. In Tabriz, the opulent summer capital, under the rule of Abaka Khan, grandson of the conqueror Hulagu, they rested in sprawling caravansaries of sun-baked brick, their vast courtyards centered on tinkling fountains that mimicked mountain streams, arches echoing the majestic vaulted halls of the Sassanid kings from the 3rd century AD. Here, learned astrologers consulted gleaming brass astrolabes, masterpieces refined by the Arab polymath al-Biruni in the 11th century. Their engravings charting planetary conjunctions with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, promising auspicious alignments for the road ahead. Through Armenia's rugged, biblical arms they pressed, where the colossal Mount Ararat loomed eternally snow-capped like a vigilant sentinel guarding Noah's legendary ark, its flanks cloaked in pine forests sacred to the fire-worshipping Zoroastrians of antiquity. The air grew crisper, laced with the resinous tang of cedar groves that had whispered prayers to Ahura Mazda for millennia, and breath became a meditative prayer against the thinning heights. In the mountain's profound, ancient hush, filling your lungs with the rarefied purity of peaks that brush the hems of the gods' robes. Out, the valley's insistent pull below, gentle and forgiving as a river carving its patient bend through unyielding stone. Georgia's rolling wine country followed, its ancient vines trained on rustic ibers since the mythic days of Colchis and Jason's golden fleece. Their subterranean cellars yielding Kavevri fermented brews of amber hue, wines buried in terracotta amphorae. Since the 8th century BC, their earthy notes warming the travelers against the encroaching chill of higher latitudes. Tiflis, with its steaming sulfur baths rising like the Earth's own exhalations from geothermal vents, offered a luxurious respite. Hot springs fed by deep volcanic veins, their mineral-rich waters easing the road's accumulated aches as effectively as the prescriptions of Hippocrates himself, the father of medicine whose scrolls had journeyed from Kos to these very crossroads. The vast Caspian steppes unfolded then like an undulating sea of golden grass waving ceaselessly under skies as boundless as Scythian legends, where scattered nomad yurts dotted the horizon like wayward ships, their felt walls painted with totemic horn and sinew, composite weapons of devastating power that had felled empires from the walls of Baghdad in 1258 to the gates of Vienna in 1241, slung casually across saddles of tooled leather embroidered with silver thread. Nights beneath infinities of stars, the luminous arc of the Milky Way stretching overhead like a celestial road mirroring their earthly one. Marco learned the art of Mongol throat singing, the kume technique, whose harmonic overtones hummed deep and resonant like the very pulse of the earth's hidden core, calming the soul's restless wanderlust into a state of profound meditative stillness. Bukhara welcomed them next, that jewel of the Timurid precursors with its turquoise-tiled domes shimmering like fragments of lattice sky fallen to earth. Its madrasas echoing with the melodic recitations of students poring over Avicenna's canon of medicine. The 11th century masterpiece that bridged the anatomical insights of Galen with the herbal lore of the Orient, prescribing rosewater distillates for the heart's quietude. From Bukhara, the turquoise waters of the Oxus River bore them eastward, its sacred flow revered by the Sogdian traders who had ferried jade from the distant mines of Khotan along these routes since the wake of Alexander the Great's conquests in 329 BC. The formidable Pamir Plateau climbed relentlessly, known to the ancients as the roof of the world, where shaggy yaks laden with salt blocks harvested from the shores of Lake Issyk-Kul plodded with bells muffled in thick felt. Against the biting winds, their breath steaming like offerings to the thin crystalline air, altitude's ethereal hush descended upon the travelers, breath growing shallow, yet profoundly intentional. In the rarefied air's crystalline purity, light and effervescent as a feather plucked from one of the Khan's prized Gerfalcons, wheeling over the abyss. Out, the lush lowlands' lingering memory, fading away like morning mist burned off by the sun's first rays. The Taklamakan Desert's rippling dunes embraced them soon after, a sea of undulating sands where mirages shimmered like half-remembered gardens of paradise, oases such as Kashgar emerging like verdant miracles with Uyghur dancers twirling to the plaintive strings of the rabab lute, their flowing silks rippling. Like captured desert winds in the courtyard lantern's glow, the Gobi's expanse followed, a boundless plain of polished pebbles and hardy saxaul shrubs that twisted like ancient bonsai against the gales, where mirages of distant lakes lured the unwary, and caravans huddled in tamarisk thickets to weather sandstorms that whispered like mischievous genies, their veils of fine grit settling by evening into a starry clarity that rivaled the vaults of heaven. Marco's leather-bound journal filled steadily with hurried sketches, the double-humped Bactrian camels with fur matted into insulating wool for winter's savage bite, their eyes fringed with lashes like curtained windows, meticulous notes on the Mongol postal relay system, the Yam network, established by Genghis Khan's decree in 1224, where fleet riders changed mounts every 25 miles to span the empire's breadth in Dundun. Mere days, pouches of edicts and tribute racing like the wind itself. At last, after 3 years of such winding, unhurried pilgrimage through terrains as varied as the chapters of a holy book, the serpentine spine of the Great Wall materialized on the horizon, a monumental ribbon of tamped earth and sun-baked brick, stretching since Emperor Qin's unification of the warring states in 221 BC, though the Mongols rode unhindered through its watchful gaps. Their empire rendering such barriers quaint relics. Khanbalik, known to the Chinese as Dadu, the Khan's meticulously planned northern capital, founded in 1267 on Kublai's visionary blueprint, unfolded before them like a dream etched in jade and gold. Towering walls enclosing 24 miles of gridded streets, palaces with gilded tile roofs curling upward like the tails of benevolent dragons, avenues lined with willow trees whose branches swayed in rhythm with the canal boats gliding silently below. The winter city shimmered under January's crystalline frost, coal braziers glowing like buried suns in the vast courtyards, where eunuchs in silk robes tended beds of peonies imported from the imperial gardens of Suzhou, their petals unfurling in defiant beauty against the cold. It was in the Hall of Supreme Audience, a grand pavilion of polished teak pillars veined with jade and lacquered in imperial vermilion, that Kublai Khan received the Venetian envoys, the air heavy with the musky tendrils of agarwood incense wafting from bronze censers shaped like mythical Qilin beasts, imported from the spice forests of Assam. At 70 years of age, the Khan, fifth in direct descent from Genghis, who in 1206 had proclaimed the Mongol nation from the humble confines of a country. Belt yurt on the Onon River's banks, sat enthroned upon a dais draped in silks woven with threads of pure gold, his eyes still keen and appraising as a gyre-falcon's unblinking stare, his beard streaked with the frost of accumulated wisdom. You bring the light of the western sun to our eastern halls, he greeted them in the guttural tones of Mongolian, his words translated fluidly by a cadre of Persian scribes proficient in the Uyghur script. The administrative lingua franca of his vast domain since its adoption in 1204, the Polos presented their treasures with measured grace, vials of holy oil consecrated in Jerusalem's rock-hewn churches, sealed letters from Pope Gregory X urging the establishment of Christian missions amid the pagodas, and from Marco himself, with his Persian, halting but earnest, a finely wrought glass astrolabe from Murano's furnaces, its brass frame etched with the interlocking zodiacs that mirrored the celestial charts adorning the Khan's own astronomical observatories in the Forbidden City's shadow. Thus began Marco's years of service in the Khan's glittering web, subtle and profound. Dispatched as a trusted messenger along the Yam routes to the distant port of Yangzhou, that thriving hub of the Song dynasty's maritime might, nestled on the banks of the Grand Canal, a 1,100-mile engineering marvel, dug by the Sui emperors in 605 AD, its ingenious system of locks and sluices ferrying rice barges from the fertile Yangtze River Delta to the imperial granaries, There, appointed governor for 3 full years, Marco oversaw the extraction and taxation of salt from the coastal evaporation pans of the Yellow Sea. Crystalline white grains panned under the relentless sun and taxed to fund the Khan's sprawling fleets. Thousands of massive junks equipped with watertight bulkheads and towering sails of woven bamboo matting, their prows cleaving the waves toward the spice islands of Java and the clove-scented groves of the Moluccas. Evenings in Yangzhou's lantern-lit tea houses, where oiled paper globes swayed gently from bamboo rafters, casting pools of amber light on polished rosewood tables. Marco sipped delicate jasmine infusions, their petals unfurling languidly in porcelain cups like secrets blooming in the steam, while Confucian scholars in long Changshan robes debated the timeless aphorisms of the Analects. Confucius' 5th century BC wisdom on the art of harmonious living, resonating through the hushed air like a distant temple bell. Summers drew him to Xanadu, the Shangdu retreat 200 miles north of the capital, a verdant paradise conceived by the Khan's master architect, Liu Bingzhong. Blending the nomadic felt yurts of the steppe with the elegant pavilions of Tang Dynasty opulence. Enclosed by earthen walls 20 miles in circuit, its grounds encompassed artificial parks, teeming with flora transplanted from across the realm. Cedars tall as Lebanon's biblical groves, lotuses drifting on man-made lakes stocked with shimmering carp, and intricate canals fed by crystalline mountain streams that meandered like veins of quicksilver. Marco wandered the bamboo groves at twilight, their slender combs rustling in the breeze like the silken veils of courtesans, his breath sinking effortlessly with the garden's innate serenity. In the orchestrated tranquility of this earthly paradise, drawing peace from leaf vein to lung's quiet depth, steady as the ripple of a koi's fin. Out the subtle undercurrents of courtly intrigues, dissolving like dew under the noonday sun, leaving only the essence of renewal. He chronicled the Khan's equestrian splendor in meticulous detail. The white horses of the imperial stables, bred from the wild herds of the Kazakh steppes and milked for kumis, that fermented mare's milk drunk from silver bowls in ritual toasts. The majestic gerfalcons, imported from the Altai Mountains' craggy eyries, hooded in velvet caps embroidered with pearls and loosed in grand hunts upon the crimson-crowned cranes, wheeling over the reed-fringed marshes. The years in Cathay's gilded embrace blurred into a seamless rhythm of service and subtle wonder, 17 in all. From the spring of 1275 to the autumn of 1292, Marco rising through the ranks to tax collector in the teeming port of Quanzhou, known to Europeans as Zaitan, where the Fujian hills cascaded down to harbors choked with Arab dhows unloading cargoes of cloves from the Moluccan spice islands, their lateen sails billowing like the wings of phoenixes reborn. Hulls sewn with coir rope in the ancient Omani tradition dating back to the 1st century AD. Storms of the South China Sea he weathered aboard those leviathan junks, their sternpost rudders, Innovations from the Han Dynasty's naval geniuses around 200 BC, holding true amid the typhoons that roared like awakening dragons, while the magnetic compass, a lodestone south-pointing spoon, refined by the polymath Shen Guo in his 1088 Dream Pool essays, guided them unerringly through fog-shrouded streets. Inland journeys trace the Yangtze River's serpentine gorges, where mist-cloaked cliffs plunged into emerald depths and terraced rice paddies stepped down the slopes like giant staircases carved from living jade. Peasants in wide conical hats of woven bamboo threshing golden grains under the patient sway of water buffalo, their bells a soft counterpoint to the river's eternal murmur. As Kublai Khan's once vital frame began to stoop under the weight of 78 winters, his eyes dimming like oil lamps turned low at curfew, Marco felt the inexorable tug of the West, a homesickness as soft and pervasive as the lagoon's morning fog rolling in from the Po. In the year 1292, the Khan, with a reluctance born of paternal fondness, entrusted the Polos with a sacred charge to escort his great niece, the young Nestorian princess Kokochin, to her betrothed, the Ilkhan Argun of Persia, sealing alliances across the empire's fractured branches. Veiled in robes of shimmering samite embroidered with phoenix motifs, the 17-year-old Kokochin traveled with a dowry of lacquerware chests inlaid with iridescent mother-of-pearl from Hainan Island's coral reefs, their lids depicting idyllic scenes of cranes soaring amid pine branches, symbols of longevity and imperial grace.